Hello students, welcome to Environment and Ecology Updates with Dr. Vivek Rana. Hope your preparation is on right track. Topic for today's discussion is relevant from perspective of GS paper 1 from society perspective, also from GS 3 which is environment ecology and disaster management. Also the theme can be asked in some way in ethical case studies section as well. So we'll be just widening your view regarding a term which is becoming a norm in recent editorials, the climate migration. Because this problem is an emerging one, and you can expect what are the implications of the climate change on society, what exactly is the impact of climate change on economic opportunities, or they just likely to ask, as in PCS syllabus mentioned, what are the broader economic impacts of climate change on the social life of individuals. So basically this is one of the themes which you can use either as an example, or you could just highlight it as a pressing humanitarian crisis which is unveiling during, you could say, the monsoon season across the globe. So currently when there is a rainfall, some people appreciate that it is a pleasant weather. For some it could be a wake up call where there even the existence is being challenged due to some excessive natural events. So if we have to define climate migration, the definition is not a too complicated one. It's nothing but large scale migration of families or a segment of population triggered by climate change induced natural disasters. The natural disasters could be of wide range, as you could see in this specific image. It's highlighting, you could say, almost inundation of land due to excessive flooding, and people are leaving their belongings and livelihood behind and trying to escape the nature fury. So basically, the flood, earthquake, or you could say tsunami, cyclones, you could name any disaster, it creates a panic mode in large segment of section. If it is sporadic in event or it's rare in occurrence, population tend to bear it. But if it becomes a repeated episode year after year, then there is a strong possibility a section of population might, which is vulnerable to, you could say, poverty, tend to take this bold decision to search for greener pastures in some other location. So it's in this topic, the main two themes which you have to prepare are basically what are the factors which are responsible for this emerging climate migration, and secondly what are its implication, because as an administrator you should have a proper strategy for specific cause of migration. If you are addressing the root cause, more or less the problem can get sorted out, or at least you can reduce its possible impact. So first major factor which is triggering this climate migration happens to be drought and rainfall variability. Even though science has evolved its own methods to decode, you could say, climate change, we are trying to better our climate perception models, but still there is a long way to go, and nature behavior cannot be pinpoint predicted with precision. So you can say it could be some repeated El Nino, La Nina events which are just creating a havoc in monsoon season, or you could simply say that failed monsoon season is impacting the livelihood of agrarian class, or you could say delayed rainfall at times can also be the source of agony for lot of families. So first and foremost reason, especially in belts of Horn of Africa, as well as in, you could say, belts of some South Asian, this is one of the predominant factor which is now directly linked to, you could say, migration of some families in on repeated basis. The second one is once again has a traumatic incident psychology, roughing the rough feathers. It is the flooding and river erosions, because at times we see some traumatic images where the entire home is collapsing, or you could say it's been flooded, the ground floor is not just visible, or everyday public transport is almost like in a flood like situation, people are being washed away. We all often come across such videos on social media, and it creates an anxiety among, you could say, a lot of individuals, and they feel that the way the glacial is melting, because we are approaching almost 2-degree rise in the Celsius in average annual temperature post industrial revolution. So, and the periodic floods don't present a rosy picture. Even in North India, we have seen in last 3-4 years, the frequency is time and again increasing, because there used to be a time when people used to appreciate the rainfall season, but over the late, due to unplanned, due to development activities, and you could say the slumber in which the administration wake up to such response, makes the common people lose distrust, and they tend to take the easy route of migrating to different ecosystems. And the third one, once again, is of recent origin. The unbearable heat waves and corresponding water scarcity is another issue, because we have seen in ancient times as well, whenever some particular geographical region is facing water scarcity or due to depleted rainfall, or you could say depleted groundwater supply, there tends to be migration, because water is something bare minimal which is required for survival of any individuals. And if you are inhabiting a region where you, for daily, you could say, requirement are not being met, and you are being forced to buy tankers, or you are at mercy of municipal corporation that they will supply water supply, more or less this everyday pain becomes too much to bear for an average family, and they tend to search for a region where at least the basic necessities, the clean air, you could say a stable landform, or you could say basic clean drinking water supply are available. They tend to take the risk of migrating to those places. So we can say we need to wake up to this emerging problem, and since the heat wave is there, not everyone is well off to afford ACs, coolers, or you could say multiple fans. At times, the heat wave, the way it is progressing, is claiming lives as well, even though the government remains adamant of not including heat wave as a natural disaster as of now, because they feel that it will be too much for administration to bear. Then the fourth one is another economic angle, the debt and income collapse, because in most of the developing and underdeveloped world, the main livelihood tends to be the primary sector, agriculture. Directly or indirectly, 40 to 50, this is a bracket which is a majority of the developing countries operate. Even India is also included in this section. So we can say this section is dependent on crop harvest, and in just in case, due to excessive rainfall, or due to less rainfall, or due to irregular rain pattern, the crop does not reach the desired yield, and it's classified as failure. Then it becomes, they enter into a debt trap, they borrow money from some money lender or some financial institutions, and they are not able to repay that debt, and that income debt trap can claim, you could say, the emerging problem of farmer suicide, and it sends a distressing signal as well. So in a way, we can say this income trap collapse is one of the primary reasons. If the land in which you are residing is not giving you the basic economic output, you tend to change for better. So basically, when your survival is at stake, you have to either adapt or you have to perish. So basically, this is another problem which triggers climate migration. And then the final one is loss of livelihood assets, because the main desire of man is to earn a decent standard of living by earning through a earnest method, and most of the hardworking individuals tend to wait for 2 or 3 years. But if you feel that your entire hard work is not being appropriated or being rewarded satisfactorily, then there is every possibility that you tend to look for some other livelihood matter. So employment is the driving force of migration, and the areas which are more prone to disasters or are frequent in news for all the wrong reasons due to climate change related events, they tend to be not a too attractive place to reside for long term. And also the large scale soil degradation, land erosion, and rising input cost has made agriculture quite an unattractive option among the new youth, or you could say there is a tendency to shift towards white collar jobs, or you feel that they had enough of nature has tested their enough patience, they tend to dispose to some other area, even though it's not that the change in location is going to change their fate for sure, but definitely they feel that this climate change induced misery is creating almost another inequality which is too much to bear for them. So basically, we can say this problem is not straightforward as it appears. There are multiple dimensions operating simultaneously. So make sure when you are presenting this particular factors responsible, you should ideally list specific themes along with the recent example of the particular disaster. Suppose there is some Marathwada region, farmer suicide can be highlighted, or you could say some hill states like Uttarakhand, Himachal are facing landslides and periodic, you could say, crop failures. So these themes have to be linked with the specific examples to get the exact marks which we are looking for. And coming to the final part, the implications of climate migration. So basically, we have to accept that climate migration is a reality, and administration as well as the political class needs to seriously introspect at what is going wrong and what should be our first and foremost strategies to deal with such emerging problem. The first major implication of this climate migration is we have seen a tectonic shift of migration from rural to urban or some township areas. So first and foremost, entire families are leaving villages, altering demographic dividend and as well as land use pattern. Even though migrating to offshore remains the primary option in case of North India, we have seen, you could say, there is still a craze. A lot of people even risk their life through donkey routes to migrate to, you could say, west. But also the people who cannot afford are surviving on meager earnings, they cannot afford to migrate out of the country, but at least they are migrating to distant lands across their original state. So basically a lot of villages are turning into ghost villages. Only few old individuals and females are residing in them, and lot of young population is trying their best to move to different parts in search of basic necessities. So we can say this rural displacement is now the hard reality which can have a long term implications on economic output of country as well as societal as well. Coming to the second one, once they migrate to urban one, it's not that the urban you could say interface has lot of resources to accommodate everyone. They were created at a time with some mere expectation of handling few lakhs or you could say few thousands of individuals. The housing societies as well as the basic, you could say, public infrastructure was developed accordingly. But once there is an overload of migrants, the problem of slums comes up. There is an increase in gender related crimes. We can see there is a violence, and at times there is an insecurity related to jobs as well, which comes into picture. So basically we can say the urban informality becomes a norm, and migrants tend to settle in slums where they even put their health at stake, because we know the basic sanitation facilities or hygiene facilities are not practiced in these clusters. Lot of people are residing in small shanties. There is no access to clean drinking water or air, and you become an easy, you could say, target of lot of health related diseases as well. So basically the safety net housing are another problems which they face on regular basis, and just in search of their dreams they tend to sacrifice their original peace related village life. And coming to gendered risk, so two sections are particularly vulnerable, which have been highlighted in the reports, that they tend to face more problems as compared to men. They tend to be the females as well as the small children. In case of female, they face multiple, you could say, sexual violence cases, because we have seen when the basic resources are at threat and human survival is at times the negative tendencies tend to overpower the mind, and females becomes easy scapegoat because they don't have, you could say, legal documents to reside there, or you could say they are residing in an area which is prone to crime, because crime thrives in these slums and they are epicenters of lot of violent related crimes. Even in, we could say, Tri-City, we have seen lot of slums being in news for all the wrong reasons. Even the young children take resort to violence on minor trigger. And also its school dropout rate is higher because generally when this migration occurs, the school timetable gets distorted. At times most of the students lose 1 year of their academic journey, and families are not in economic position to enroll students. Even though we say right to education, is a norm, but still we have long way go if we want the students are really educated. The basic arithmetic, or you could say learning skill, tend to be below average in most of such scenarios when they are sent across the towns. Then coming to labor exploitation, since your survival is at stake, you tend to take a meager job. You are not in position to assert your labor rights. Generally, they tend to get overexploited by the contractors, or you could say the large scale farmers, the contract bound cane cutters. They have to work without exit, almost like human bonded labor becomes a norm, even though constitution guarantees that there should not be any forced labor, but we tend to observe that this is something which becomes a norm, and lot of persons are living in such in debt trapped, or you could say bonded labor, even in modern time. The in Africa, you could say the slavery was a quite common norm, in which you could say Western person used to come and they tend to exploit. Even in modern times, still the climate related events are triggering such acute circumstances in which some individuals, without their consent, they get into this vicious trap, and it's not easy to escape, even though administration exists on such all such regions. And finally, it leads to erosion of social structures, the long-term migration breaks, the rural sports system, the collective farming resilience, because in case of India, we have seen the joint family was a norm few decades ago, but currently we have seen the rise of nuclear families where individualism is dominating rather over the collective conscience. And the joint family offered lot of sport during, you could say, ups and downs of life, and the family sport system as well as the local neighborhood came to the rescue of such person who were facing some kind of economic, or you could say personal hurdles. But now the people are living in isolation, they are not able to cope up. Generally the relationships tend to be superficial one rather than the deep one, and the problem tends to get over complicated with such behavior. So we can say the traditional society, which used to be a norm in this society, even that is facing existential crisis because of this specific event. So I hope this particular theme, which focus primarily on highlighting the emerging problem of climate migration, has enlightened you in some way regarding the gravity of the issue, and you could improvise on this theme further and add on what you feel can be further, you could say, implication or the factors which are triggering this event, because this topic is evolving. Even though on paper it tends to appear quite an easy one to nut to crack, but at times these easy themes are also difficult to crack, because examiner tend to get repetitive answers from multiple students, and specific standout examples, or you could say a well structured answer, tend to get a better marks or proposition. So we'll be back with another, you could say, current affair update in next lecture. Keep following Civil Service Gurukul for your civil service preparation. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.